conversation about technology and innovation in nonprofits and corporate philanthropy, and I want to welcome our panelists for this conversation. We have Penny Herscovitch, who is with Pad Lab, a design company here in Los Angeles. We have Doug McConnell, who is provost and senior vice president of Fuller Seminary. We again have Jacquelline Fuller with Google.org, and we have Eric Stowe from the clean water nonprofit Splash. I will be moderating this conversation. My name is Gideon Strauss. I'm with the Max De Pree Center for Leadership here at Fuller Seminary. And we've asked Eric to introduce the conversation, talking about some of his passions around nonprofit life and the role of technology and the importance of certain kinds of innovation. So, Eric.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. Man, as a dad of a just turned 4-year-old girl last week, that was awesome. Right? I feel like this sense of kind of looming doom, but this sense of total inspiration at the same time. So, thank you for that. It was awesome. I really enjoyed that. And that, if you're around for lunch, I'm really talking about the quantitative, qualitative sides and how you merge those two. And man, that Gina Davis Institute, I really feel like they're one of the few I've ever heard that actually knows how to straddle those worlds. Quickly, so pre-2010, who here has given to an international charity? Majority. Today, how many of you know how those projects are actually functioning? Truly? Well, you definitely, yeah. I got 3. I saw 3. The original was 50, the second was 3. So I come from the water sector. That's kind of loosely defined as those groups that are working globally to end or alleviate water poverty. And we've got, truth be told, a really abysmal track record. So in the last 30 years of development, we've worked in every single country globally as a sector. And presently, we may have succeeded in 40% of those projects. I'm talking billions of dollars of investment. Gone down the tube. So when we talk about tech and corporate philanthropy, fortunately, there's a lot of really frustrated NGOs in the water sector. And equally and concurrently, there's a lot of incredibly frustrated philanthropists and foundations. And foundation, thanks. And foundations. And so there's a huge push right now on tech to actually monitor. And that sounds surprising, it shouldn't. That should be integral in any NGO's kind of primary model. But it's new, it's very new. So 3 decades later, we're just now getting around to monitoring projects. And so in this conversation, at least when we talk about tech, I'm far more interested in new tech that's surveying and monitoring the old tech rather than I am new innovations. For the most part in the water sector, there are exceptions and outliers, but for the most part in the water sector, there's nothing new. We've been doing this for decades, we know how to do it, but we've never appropriately monitored. So Jacqueline may bring up a recent Global Impact Award that Google gave that was just phenomenal. And by extension, we're one of the implementers of that. There's a few groups that are actually pushing for monitoring, and so in this conversation around tech and corporate philanthropy, I'm far more interested in that. So I'll leave that one brief.
When we thought of putting together this particular panel, we wanted to focus rather broadly on technology and innovation in nonprofits and the corporate philanthropy world. But we were intrigued to discover that one of our higher education neighbors here in Pasadena, the Arts Center College for Design, actually did some really interesting and innovative stuff in the same sector as what Eric is working in. And so I spoke to Mariana Matullo, and Mariana suggested that we get Penny to come and talk to us about Safe Agua, and so we're going to go to that at this moment.
Great, well, thank you so much. And I can speak without a microphone, is that all right? Or I can do this one. Hi. Well, we're really happy to be here down the hill in downtown Pasadena and to have more connections with everyone here at Fuller. And I'm Penny. I'm the co-leader of the Safe Agua Project, which is a Design Matters project at Art Center. And I'm really happy to share it with you. This is an educational initiative, and we aim to bring innovative new products that are radically affordable to slum dwellers through design, and specifically addressing issues of access to water in Chile and Peru. As we've discussed, there's a lot of development in the water sector. Nearly half the world lives without access to basic water and services. And with Safe Agua, Art Center College of Design undergrads are working directly with Latin American families who are living on $4 to $10 a day. We're innovating water products that are radically affordable to maximize cleanliness, health, dignity, and the possibility for families to earn additional income. This is an ongoing initiative since 2009, beginning in Chile, now in Peru, and we're hoping to expand to Colombia at the end of this year. And it's made possible thanks to a grant from the NCIA, which has done a lot for STEM research, and we're really excited to be one of the first design institutions that works with them. And most importantly, through our partnership with an NGO, Techo, which is in 19 countries across Latin America. Their work is very much like an expanded version of Habitat for Humanity, focusing in Latin America, working with slum dwellers, and we're working with their innovation center. They're bringing social innovation to overcome poverty, working with educational institutions like us at Art Center and across Latin America, working with families themselves living in poverty, and working with businesses. And this Safe Agua Project starts out as a class, and that's really important. All of the students and faculty begin kind of with an exercise of empathy here in Pasadena, themselves living without access to running water, so spending a day without taps, purchasing water. They can't drive, which is shocking in LA. They need to carry water, boil it, and pay for it. That's because the families that we went to meet when we were doing our field research in Cerro Verde in Peru live without running water. They pay 14 times more for water that isn't clean to be delivered by truck to these hillsides, and then they carry the water up the hills. And we're looking at issues beyond necessarily clean drinking water, but there's everything that you do in a day, and you realize if you spend a day without taps, it touches on water. It's eating, cleaning, going to school, you need clean clothes, clean uniforms. So through our field research, the students identified key needs and opportunities and continued to work with families in Cerro Verde and other families that our NGO works with to prototype and develop prototypes and continue to advance, hopefully looking towards implementation. So really, Safe Agua has a dual aim. The first is to change undergrad design education, to give students, like Alex, getting a lot of props, and we've got a lot of other students participating at Art Center, also partnering with the MBAs at the Marshall School of Business at USC, the opportunity to have a first-hand experience of social innovation, and also to make an impact on global water poverty. And we're just starting, we're at the very early pilot stages, but we do want to build in measures of impact from that really early pilot testing, which is where we are. And I'd like to also show a brief video, if I can take a moment to show Balde a Balde, a portable faucet by product design student Kim Chow, and Giradora by Gia Yu and Alex Kavanagh, product design student who's here today. And they've created a video telling you about these two really exciting projects that have grown out of Safe Agua.
Sorry, Penny, you mentioned the students. Can they just sort of wave their hands so we know where they are?
I think we've got Alex here and Kim, I think the others are in class. So
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
In fall of 2011, we visited families in Sierra Verde, a slum of Lima, Peru. Like nearly half of the global population, residents lived without running water. Through working with these families, we created Balde Balde and Girador, solutions that help alleviate the burden of water poverty. During our research, we noticed that for most household tasks, women moved water with pitchers, often contaminating and spilling water, a resource they pay 14 times more for than they do in the city. Because water is difficult to control, proper hand washing practices that can save twice as many lives as clean water alone are replaced by washing in dirty, stagnant water. To address these issues, we created Balde Balde, a portable faucet that delivers running water from any bucket. completed prototypes with 3 families for 3 days. The flexibility of Balde allowed the room to show us exactly what they valued most, using it for anything from making hand washing stations for their kids to emptying their water containers. We adjusted the design to enhance these values, developing a specifically engineered clip-in valve, allowing Balde to deliver running water exactly how and where it's needed. For the women of Sierra Verde, clean clothes are as important as clean bodies. Laundry is a top priority, related not only to health, but also personal joy. Cleaning clothes is a huge investment of time and resources. The difficulty of washing by hand leads to a variety of health problems, and long drying times invite mold growth causing respiratory illness. In response, we created Girador, a human-powered washer and spin dryer. It increases the efficiency and improves the experience of washing clothes for families living without basic services. We sent an early prototype of our washer spin dryer to Peru and adjusted our designs accordingly. Sitting on top of the appliance, the user pumps the pedal with her foot, which agitates, cleans, rinses, and spin dries the clothes. Girador makes washing laundry quick and effortless, and it also reduces drying time, hampering mold growth. Additionally, it creates income-generating opportunities through laundry services, rentals, and direct sales. With Balde and Girador, clean is now affordable to all.
So these 2 products were co-created. They were developed with families from Sierra Verde, and they've gone on to receive many awards and grants that will allow the teams to continue prototypes, continue field testing in Latin America with our NGO partners and with families. We're looking towards implementation. The team is now launching a company and is looking to bring these products to fruition, to distribute across Latin America. And we really hope to continue with Safe Agua towards bringing a real-world impact to water poverty and bringing social innovation to undergrad design education. Thank you.
As I'm listening to Eric and Penny, 2 things kind of jump out at me with regard to innovation and technology in the world of nonprofits and corporate philanthropy. The one is an emphasis from Eric on the importance of, let's call it accountability, or a focus on outcomes. And not just focusing on those outcomes, but actually monitoring whether those outcomes are achieved and what the impact is in the long run. Listening to Penny, I'm impressed with the incredible importance of education for technological innovation, the importance of design, education for the future of nonprofit and corporate philanthropic interventions in the world at large. And I'm wondering, Jacqueline and Doug, on the one hand as a corporate philanthropist and on the other hand as an educator, Doug, before he took the position as provost here at Fuller, was the dean of the School for Intercultural Studies, which is an educator for a lot of people who go out to lead nonprofits around the world. I was wondering, as you listen to this conversation, what do you think are some of the priorities that should be in the minds both of nonprofit leaders and of the educators of future nonprofit leaders?
Sure. I'm a disciple of Eric. I heard him speak at a conference that we were both at, and I was like, he is right on. So I think what you heard from him is actually fairly unusual right now in the sector, but really where we need to head, both as on the funding side as well as the action side. And to sum it up, I would say it's this. In business, when you talk about a company like Google and how we think about our investment across OpEx and CapEx and new products and understanding the market, you know, of course we're going to look at data. We're a data-driven company. We want to know not only, you know, generally is this working? I mean, we know, like, well, probably shouldn't go there, but we know a lot of data about, you know, page views and you know, who's clicking and what did they end up doing after that. And you know, the interesting thing is that that's the business side, and then you come to the philanthropy side, and you work with the nonprofits who are really the heroes, who are on the front lines in the field, and who are largely just exhausted because, darn it, they are focused on providing that water or that food or the education. But there's just not the metrics there. I don't actually blame the nonprofits so much. I blame the funders, because 2 reasons. 1, we haven't asked for data that matters, and 2, we've asked for a lot of data that really doesn't matter and just creates a lot of friction. So the most important information you want is basically like, is it working? And if not, why not, right? Because these outcome metrics that we really want to see, like Eric was talking about in clean water, you know, don't just show me, okay, I gave you the money and here is a photo and a map showing the project. That's great. That's a first step. In some places you're not even getting that. That's great. But the statistic that I learned is that at any given time, 1/3 of the wells and water sources in the developing world for clean water aren't even working. So we need to go beyond the initial investment and understand what's the real-time data, right? So the grant that he alluded to was inspired in part by what words that he had said, but it's just basically around, you know, let's put sensors, cheap sensors, on these water sources so that we get the real-time data on whether the water is available. And here's the second part that's important. And let's make that data available to everybody at the same time, right? Because, you know, the reason why I say I don't blame the nonprofits is that as funders, we just have to get smarter about this and realize that, you know, the data is not so much to go into a report that sits on a shelf, and it certainly shouldn't be driving decisions about, do we shut off this group or that group? I mean, really, it's biofeedback. The kind of data that we get in our business that drives our business decisions, you know, is like, okay, well, we tried this A/B test and A worked better than B. You know, we went with this ecosystem, and you know what, it's working great here, but not here, and so this is how we're going to iterate. We need to have much more of that mindset with our data. And I think if we did have that mindset and we're more open about it, then nonprofits would be more, A, willing to invest to gather that data, and then B, be transparent about it. Because I think mistakenly on the funding side, too often, nonprofits feel like they can't be honest, actually, about the metrics that they are seeing for fear of losing funding from funders who aren't really willing to sort of go with them and understand the context around it. So at Google, we're really excited about 2 things primarily. One is innovation. We feel like what we can bring, we don't give that much money relative to, say, a Gates Foundation, but what we can bring is a tolerance for risk. We're willing to take informed risk. We're willing to partner with someone, and you know, we just gave a grant to WWF to try to use drones in conservation. You know, maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not, but let's give it a try because we're about to lose the rhino as a species. You know, so innovation, willing to take informed risk, and then the other thing is around this whole notion of outcomes and transparency. So that's really where we're putting our emphasis.
Can I just reply just one second? I would just say that the onus is not solely on the funders. I think the majority of NGOs don't truly know how to get to their outcomes. And I mean that sincerely, right? We build a school, and by extension, of course, kids are going to have an education. That's not true. If you're building schools, your end outcome is about a child having a better livelihood. It's not about the number of kids that went in that door. It's about the number of kids that were retained there, the testing scores, the attendance rates, and how those look over time. And I think as NGOs, we're not giving funders what our outcome map is. So I think it's on both sides. That both sides are absolutely culpable in this. But I would suggest that most NGOs go to a donor and they say, well, in my instance, we give clean water to kids. That's all we have to say. We have to show a couple nice photos of kids drinking water, and then by extension, we raise money. That's ridiculous. There has to be an outcome associated with that. And most organizations in the water sector are not monitoring towards that, course correcting in the face of data that says you're not on the right path, et cetera. So it's on both sides. We're definitely culpable.
we've had a really great example here of, on the one hand, from Eric, the concern for truth in advertising and really telling it like it is, and from Penny, the motivating power of technology and reports. So let me raise two things that we haven't talked about. One is context and one is fatigue. Context. One of the problems with a lot of innovations are that they're created outside of the place in which the feelings are felt, the attitudes are formed, and the people are living. So we're doing a water project that's designed in Pasadena, and at the end of this month in Pasadena, we actually are going to have a water cutoff because they're doing water repair. So it's going to be you ought to make hay on that one. Really take advantage of that. The city's doing that for you. So on the one hand, it's done there. But when you're in a place, for example, let me give you. I worked for 17 years in the South Pacific, part-time in the outback of Australia and southern Papua New Guinea. And one of the interesting things, we did a well project, and we built a well, and traditionally in that society, men were hunters and women were gatherers. That was how it played out. You're talking about subsistence farming. The women would go every day a long walk to the river to get water. The water wasn't clean, so they'd have to carry that water back, and then they would have to boil the water and do the cleaning and everything. So every day was wrapped up in the trip to the water. And what it looked like was a coffee break at an institution, because everybody's talking and having a good time, and they had to walk 5 miles, and they enjoyed it, and then they carried it all back heavily, but they didn't have heart attacks, and they were all physically fit, and they had a great social life. We put the well in the middle of the village, and it took like 10 minutes to do your water thing. And then what do you do? So there was a dissipation of role within the society and a kind of a crisis of who I am. So we didn't think about that. We just thought about the innovation of quick water. So context has a lot of demands. And one of the things that I think is a problem in reporting is that you have to translate so much before you understand. You know, I just gave you a 30-second view of 17 years of experience. That's not easy to do. So the context in which these things happen, you need to get. So that's an important part of the educative process. And you need people that can communicate that back. Because for the most part, if you don't do that, what you run the risk of is a kind of a neo-colonialism. You've got the power, you've got the money, you can tell what the innovations are. And that's a problem. So then the flip side of that is fatigue. And that's on our side. I don't know about you, but I've been the chair of a foundation that gives away money every year for about the last about the last 12 years. I've been on it for about 15 to 17 years. And one of the things I see project after project after project after project, and the first time I see it, it's exciting. By the 10th time, I'm a little tired. And that's a phenomenon that happens. It's donor fatigue. And one of the problems is Penny's just given you a great pitch for something that you ought to get behind. That's a great idea. And if she does the research on the field, fantastic. But the truth is, 3 weeks from now, that's old hat. You want something new. And one of the problems with donors and giving is that unless you get the donor involved in actually knowledgeably knowing what's going on and really feeling the lift day after day, you don't get loyalty. And so the fatigue piece is one that we have to work on. So on the one hand, context. On the other hand, fatigue.
There seems to me to be a potential connection between addressing donor fatigue and building monitoring in a way that not only allows for accountability, but that also increases engagement. Now, you funded some interesting work in the water area around this. You are doing work that has a high commitment, Eric, to monitoring. Are you beginning to see an impact on donor communities? So this is the outcomes question. Does monitoring have an actual outcome on donor fatigue?
I think so. And I would posit that under the umbrella that we built an internal system called Proving It, and I'll talk about it later at lunch. But the entire rationale or the genesis behind it was that we were tired of treating donors like ATMs, right? If we're treating donors as investors, they need to be along this journey, because this journey is damn hard, especially in international development. There's a ton of goods. I think there's far more bads, right? Those learning moments where you pivot or course correct. Donors have to be there. We cannot just provide you a 1-year report. Everything's working. Oh God, is that it? We just asked you for a 10-year grant and we're going to report once, maybe twice in the first year of operation. When you said that, I think it was a third that are failed, 2/3 failed. Most of those fail within the first 12 to 18 months. So we just passed the cycle, right? We gave you the grant report and it failed, but you would never know that. So we as an organization, me as the director, and then by extension the organization, we cannot live with donors as ATMs, especially thinking of the scale that we're trying to go to. We're trying to end water poverty. We can't do that on one-off grants, on donors who don't cycle back through with us and grow with us. They have to be investors. But to be an investor, you have to know all the crap that happens. You have to see the bad. So I think the fatigue is absolutely normal in the current paradigm that we've built, which is marketing, glam, glitz, and soft reporting. But if you bring that donor on this journey with you and they become partners and investors, not just an ATM, it's absolutely a new relationship. So at our largest set of donors, so 3 or 4 different sets of donors, they've increased year after year, even watching us make huge blunders and make mistakes, because they know it when we know it. They get the information, they see when we hit that brick wall, and it's a totally different relationship with them.
I'm going to ask Jacqueline to respond to this question also, but in our previous panel, we kind of ran out of time in terms of engaging you as our conversation partners, and I'm going to try and not do that this time around. So we're going to go to conversation with the whole room in a moment. So if you could think so long how you want to respond or what questions you want to raise for our panelists, that would be great. And then in a few seconds we'll circulate some of these hand mics and we can broaden the conversation.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I think we need to understand a lot more about the sort of behavioral economics and psychology of giving, because we're not rational beings, right? So I'm on the board of World Vision, and one thing that has just been so incredible is looking at the amounts of money that are brought in through child sponsorship. So I've been a child sponsor since I was 18 years old, right? And I just really like getting that photo and the updates and whatnot, you know? And there's a part of me that knows that is just not efficient, and I should just give my money, and they should be putting it into trucks that are doing well repair, because that's the most efficient way, right? But there's this human part of me, right, that wants that connection and just like taking those photos, right? So you can look down on that and think, oh, it's not the most efficient. And yet on the other hand, I was just amazed as a board member. I was looking at the giving levels through the recession, and what we saw is, the level of new acquisitions, new sponsors who are coming online correlated very much with the unemployment rate, right? So, when people don't have jobs, they're not signing up to sponsor kids. But I'll tell you what did not drop is sponsors did not drop their kids. So even through that recession, you barely saw a dip in people who had a relationship with someone on the other end and felt a personal responsibility, right? So, the thing about giving is I think there's a lot of potential out there for us to do new and fun and different ways of giving. There's a lot of innovation right now on the internet around crowdfunding things together, right? Giving is inherently a social thing. And so I think there's a lot of room to sort of iterate and understand, there's going to be the Bill Gates and the Googles of the world who are moved by statistics, and really want to see those metrics and those reports. And there's going to be people who are moved by the photo and the happy stories, right? And I feel like we need to give people, meet them where they are and give them what they need in order to more fully engage them in this whole giving conversation. And I think the internet actually will help us to do that in new and different ways that actually haven't been discovered yet. I think the crowdfunding and the the peer-to-peer. Now you're seeing it's not just child sponsorship, it's things like Bitana, which is this new organization that's helping you can give an education loan, directly. So I think there's a lot more in this direct, like the donors choose model. I want to choose this project, I want to help this teacher with these microscopes. There's a lot more there that we can do that's going to help unlock, I think, some of these resources too.
In our previous panel, the short videos that some of our panelists showed actually sort of brought a lump to my throat, which was surprised me. Just the incredible emotional power of those presentations. And I might be a little weird as an educator, but I'm watching Eric and Penny scribble away in their notebooks here up on the panel, and I'm getting a lump in my throat. It's just so beautiful. Jeff Anschluss is one of our doctoral fellows at the De Pree Center, and he's going to hand the mic around. Please wave at us if you want to respond to our panel or raise a question.
Hi, my name is Janice, and I am a Fuller alum from the School of Intercultural Studies. Yay! I'm also a leader in a nonprofit here in Los Angeles. I oversee a shelter for homeless and at-risk veterans. And I want to address the topic about measurements, metrics, and what our role is. You talked about that from a service provider as well as from a funder. And I've struggled a lot with that. We desire to measure our results. And the business that we're in, though, is in transforming lives. So that's not a transactional business. That's not, I fed someone a meal. That's part of the transformation process, but that's a more low level. And so one of the things I just want to kind of share from my experience is that in the struggle of truly measuring success, defining success and measuring it, we don't have the skill sets as a service provider. We're social workers. Our greatest added value is working with the individual and making it happen for them over a period of time. We can ask a funder for that position. Can you please, fund as a position where we can actually develop meaningful metrics? We can do that. However, we don't know how to lead that person effectively, because at the end of the day, our greatest value is delivering services to an individual to ensure their success and transformation over a period of time. So what I think needs to happen is that we need an entity that is truly skilled in designing a metrics that's meaningful to the services that we deliver. It cannot be done separate, because obviously we're talking about transforming lives. It's not widgets. This is people, and people's lives are messy. And success is not always defined by, I house this veteran now. No, they might have a relapse, but that doesn't mean that they're unsuccessful. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So in my desire to truly find successful way of measuring success, is we want that as a service provider because we don't want to waste our time. And we also want that as a learning tool to feed into our program design. But we just don't have the skills. That's not our added value. We're not, our best gift is not utilized in that manner. So I feel that we need to have a separate entity that is truly skilled in that, systematic way of monitoring and evaluating effectiveness so that it can be pulled into the design and integrated into better outcomes. And we need someone who is extremely skilled in that can also translate that into collaboration with a nonprofit and help us to define the measure of success in a way that really humanizes transformation. It's the storytelling of how a person really gets to the next level. So that's my little bit there.
Just throw in, and this is very graciously, I totally disagree. Do you have a CFO?
Yes.
I believe that the metrics that we are raising money for, which is saying, whatever your case is, mine is better health and development for the kids we serve. If I don't have someone on my staff who's helping me measure towards that, how am I raising money? And I get, I'm a program dude, right? That's where my heart lies. My background is China studies. I don't get math. I don't get science. I barely get water filtration. No, I don't get that stuff. What I do get is kids and clean water. And if that's the sole way I'm raising money, it's probably pretty efficient. But I absolutely think someone on your team measuring toward outcome and helping you course correct when you're not hitting them is as integral as your CFO. It has to be a part of the organization's culture. And traditionally, I think we're thinking in this antiquated dinosaur mentality that if we just get someone from the outside, if we just get this consultant to fix it, it's going to be the panacea. I don't think that's true. There are really smart folks already working in your field that would love to work with you. Now, raising the money, that's a totally different topic, right? That's a hard one. But if we aren't actually institutionalizing and operationalizing how we are going towards our outcomes, how in the hell are we raising money? And that wasn't, I'm sorry, that sounded like a soapbox. It is so hard to imagine that we're asking for, I have to raise $1.6 million additional this year just to achieve our budget. I think I can do it really swiftly, showing that the service good in water and letting the donor make the assumption that we're getting there. I don't think it's appropriate, though.
I agree having measures whether or not they're meaningful is right, because every funder is looking for different things. And so,
Janice, I just want to move it along, given the time. There's something that you said that I wanted to connect. Eric, I heard Janice say that one of the reasons why she's trying to figure out what meaningful metrics is not so much for communicating with donors, but to learn organization. And I've heard you say something similar. Could you, maybe the two of you can sort of respond to that in terms of the purpose of measuring and monitoring, and then I can go back onto you now.
Yeah, no, I've been a funder for most of my life. There was one year where I went to India. I was still with the Gates Foundation, but I was with a program that had, like, sort of operated on the other side of the table. And I have to say, it's got to be so frustrating, to be a nonprofit and to have, like, 7 funders and have them all ask for different metrics. I mean, what a waste of time. It's just totally inefficient. So I think, harmonizing what donors are asking for is a big part of it. We need to be a lot better, a lot more sensitive with what metrics are required. Needs to be a conversation. We try to do that with our grantees. We sit down together and define the project together and define deliverables together and metrics. We've never assigned things. So I think donor harmonization would really help with that. I think the other thing that donors need to do is we need to provide money in our grants for M&E. Absolutely. And if your donors aren't doing that, you really ought to demand it. Because it's not enough to just say we're giving you some overhead. I think if there's significant ask there. And, I do think that there's probably a role for both having internal expertise with some external advisory best practices, and it probably is a field that needs to develop a little bit more in the same way that you can have maybe a comms person who then has an agency come in and do certain things because, you don't happen to have an excellent videographer or whatever, or designer. So I sort of see the wisdom in both, that having the in-house, because the in-house knows the issue the most and can be the person who's going to ensure that you're taking those learnings and pivoting on them, but also wanting some outside expertise to come in from time to time to just help you with best practices.
Yeah, we always have folks coming in and kicking our butts and telling us where we're wrong and learning from them. Absolutely. But I think having someone on your staff is so integral. So, I sound like the curmudgeon, and that isn't my intent, and I'm sorry. I love the NGO world. I've never actually worked for any, except for coffee shops and being a janitor during college. That's all I've ever done, and that's where my heart is. And I hear your struggle, because we basically have diversified our internal monitoring portfolio amongst 4 different staff. We don't have one full-time person that does it, because we don't have, as you just said, it's hard to package up all those skill sets in one person. So we've had to have multiple people absorb it at 25% of their time. But we made that conscious decision, and we actually lagged in programs for a year and a half. We lost tons of traction because we made the internal decision we have to track, and we have to track far more deeply than we are presently. And in doing so, we had to build up the skill sets and content expertise of existing staff by hiring those contractors to come in and train. But relying on contractors for the long term, that doesn't seem like a solution.
I just wanted to bring one quick comment up and tying it back to education. And what I think a lot of this conversation ties into is the value of interdisciplinary teams and how important that's been to us, starting to have not only product designers and spatial designers working together, but also business students, engineers, and I see now also the value. We've had a faculty member who is in the social sciences ethnography, and how valued that should be to have a student team member, so that we've got a kind of model of all of those different skill sets as students are learning them and building them in teams towards social impact.
Yeah, thank you. Jim Lewis, MA Global Leadership graduate from Fuller, and nonprofit executive and consultant. With missions, domestic and foreign missions experience, I really appreciate the comment on really understanding that implications of the change agent. You know, we think we know what the other people need, whether it's homeless or those without water in the highlands of New Guinea. We don't necessarily always look at the implications of the social and that kind of thing. That goes along with the idea of the individual nonprofit entrepreneur having their idea, having their passion, and going off and doing, you know, trying to do what they want to do. And last 2 decades, they saw 1.4 million individual nonprofit growth. And of course, with the economic, it's gone down, but now we're seeing a lot of people going back into the nonprofit. My question is, how do we, as nonprofit entrepreneurs, with our ideas and passion about doing things and helping people and providing services, not duplicate services which dilute the funding stream? So this goes both programmatic and the donor side of nonprofit NGOs. How can we use our innovation and technology today, you know, to really communicate what is needed, how we can reach out and touch people with the appropriate services, and really understand that the collaboration and lack of duplication can help not dilute the funding streams?
Yeah, you know, there's this interesting dynamic, right, where you have to ask yourself every day, what am I really optimizing for, right? So if I'm optimizing for outcomes, like the way I think that Splash is, it might at sometimes make sense to stop doing things and let others do them, right? So if you discover that there's actually another NGO or entity who's providing that same service and you would be redundant or whatnot, right? If you're actually optimizing for the outcome around the child, you might decide, you know what, we're actually going to step away and we're actually going to give them some funding or give them tell this funder about them or you know, whatnot. Or, you know, there's a statistic that I think we've increased, someone in the audience can correct me if I get this wrong, I think we have increased the number of NGOs 10 times in the last decade, and you know, the funding's flat, right? So we have this proliferation of nonprofits, right, who are out there trying to do this work. So it's very hard actually not to duplicate or get redundant when the numbers are increasing so much. I get a lot of young people coming to me who say, I want to be a social entrepreneur, you know. It's probably the number 1 thing I get. Well, the number 1 thing I get is give me money, but yeah. The number 2 is give me a job at Google, and number 3 though is young people saying, I'm starting out, I want advice, I want to be a social entrepreneur. And a lot of them have an idea about something that they want to start. And I usually tell them, why do you want to start something new? Are you sure there's not an existing organization who's doing a pretty darn good job where you could join and help them out? And then maybe after you've done a landscape analysis and have a few years of experience and you see a need in, you know, starting something, but like this impulse to differentiate rather than merge. So yeah, I guess that would be my take on it.
I'd like to just pick up on something. I think Eric's driving a point that we all need to make, and that is that that we need to be representing what's going on. And if we can educate our donors, and as donors we want to be educated, we want to know what's going on. If we can couple those two together, it'll be fine. If you can say, we did this for 10 years, we don't do it well, World Vision does it well, let them do it, and we're working with them in XYZ. So in other words, if there's the kind of reporting relationship that allows for that, part of what you're doing is not just the impact in the context where you're working, you're helping people to learn how to be better givers and better workers. And most of us want a takeaway when we give. And the takeaway is, I know how to give my money well. And that's a very worthy goal. And I think if we can impact, and Eric's right on, I mean, we really need to lift our game. And part of the game needs to be, I made a mistake, I won't do that again.
Yeah.
Or here's my new mistake. And just invite people into an honest dialogue. Because I can tell you, as provost of this institution, about half of my decisions go mistake at times.
Yeah.
and I learned from it. I don't do that again. So second time with the mistake, you're in trouble. But first time.
Do you tell your bosses about it?
Oh yeah. No, I don't have to. They know before I do it.
My name's John, and I have relatively little to do with Fuller. General kind of aspirational question maybe. I was curious, the conversation about donor community. If you guys could unpack a little bit of what your aspirational kind of things are. What is a good donor community? What does that look like? What is a dynamic donor community about?
It's interesting that you asked the question, what's a good donor community? I love that you said community, right? Because I think most people would say, how do you be a good donor? Yeah. But I love that you said community. I think at Google, when we think about how can we be a good donor and be a part of a good donor community, one of the things that I learned from my experience at Gates, I was there for 8 years at the Gates Foundation, we did a survey about 5 years in, of our grantees to see, how are we doing as a funder and this and that. Oh my gosh, they obliterated us. We got such low ratings, right? So we were getting really high ratings from institutions and people for sort of like impact and kind of smart giving, but the grantees were basically saying you suck to work with, So I think making sure, that you're asking sometimes, how are we doing or what could we be doing better, and then, learning from that and having some humility, not carrying that power stick around. And then on the community part, I just had a good conversation yesterday with Randy Newcomb, who runs Humanity United, which is founded with Midyar money, and they're basically working on issues of slavery and trafficking. And what we said over lunch was that, in this area of slavery and trafficking, there's not been a ton of money. There's some new money coming in. Let's all sit down together and actually map out the roadmap of what needs to be done and develop a plan together about collective impact. So we're not going to build a fund and all throw our money in together, but basically we're just going to learn together so we can decide together where we think some of the strategic gaps are and where some levers are, and where we can, okay, well, you guys can do that, well, maybe we can do this, and be more coordinated.
I don't know what that community looks like.
But he wants to meet them.
Yeah.
No, it's the donors that I think most adore us and that we most adore are those that are willing to absorb and take those risks with us. That they know if in fact we are innovating at a global scale, we are going to screw up. And I don't want to keep saying we screw up all over the place because it sounds like our work is shoddy. It's not. But we're constantly iterating. There's this whole new trend in the NGO sector to say, we have to learn from failure, fail fast, and we're trying to emulate. Of course we all fail. We work in international development. We just call it mistakes, right? We call it evolution. We call it iteration. So we're constantly growing. We're constantly evolving. And it's the donors who accept that and invest in that. They're not saying, I'm going to invest in this one small project and 95% of it has to go to programmatic. I might give you 5% management. They are the donors who are investing in us as an organization and the goals that we're striving for. So absorbing that risk with them instead of outside of them.
We've got about 5 minutes left before we're going to wrap up this conversation, and I wanted to raise a question that Penny actually raised in some of the correspondence that we had before this morning's conversation. Penny, you said that one of the things that you're thinking about, specifically responding to the entire question of monitoring, is how do you build impact measures into the initial stages of social startups. I wonder if you can expand on your question, and then I wonder if the rest of the panel can just respond to that question as a conclusion for us, because I think that it has some implications for how we educate future social entrepreneurs, and I think it has tremendous impact on the success of social innovation if you're able to equip people with ways of building in the monitoring approach or attitude at a very early stage. I've been an executive in 4 nonprofit organizations by now, and in each case I came in not as a founder, but as someone, a generation into the existence of the organization, and in almost every instance discovering that we have a certain momentum as an organization that's unrelated to our actual potential outcomes, and we don't have an ethos of monitoring. So and that's difficult. It's difficult to change that. So how do you build it in at the early stages?
Well, I was going to say you did a great job of interpreting my question, so thank you. But I think my question came from, at the micro scale of pilot testing a product, we have some understanding, okay, what are the water savings? What are the time savings? What's the impact? That I think we have an understanding of, but then at the somewhat more mesoscale, even not necessarily macro, how do you sort of build in the iteration the same way we do in the design process to building an organization or building a mission, building institutions, so that we can be kind of self-reflective, and it's a lot like what you brought up, and have that grow when you're just starting and you don't know maybe you know what your items are, but that roadmap is very fuzzy still. So I guess that would be a very interesting thing. I think one note on the donor community, we've been lucky with the NCIA to have a donor who's held many workshops, held kind of venture lab, entrepreneurship workshops that have literally helped map out goals. And that's been incredibly valuable. They've brought that knowledge base to us as faculty and to our students. But then, okay, we have that map, and where do we go from there? How do we be sure that we're embarking on that? So I don't know, that's not exactly a question, but I would love to bring that up as a conversation.
Can I add to your question? Sure. I don't have an answer, I'm just adding to your question. And also to your point, if all of the metrics and outcomes we create are driven from our minds, right? Well, what if you build a well in the wrong spot and you're really actually not making the women's lives any better because you're taking away the social aspect, right? So how do we build in those outcomes early, but do it with the community so that they really reflect the reality of their lives?
I would just jump in and say, so Charity Navigator, I'm not sure if you know who that is, but they assign the stars related to efficacy and functionality of an organization, a nonprofit organization. And they are just now shifting to this idea of constituent feedback, right? How does the NGO that we are approving with the number of stars, whatever, how do they listen to and react to those they purport to serve? I think it's, and I'll say it at lunch, it is the #1 thing. It's the hardest thing to do, to over time listen to the communities that you purport to serve, and that we're raising money from you to serve. But how do you openly listen to them? It's the fundamental, I think it's the biggest divide right now for the nonprofit community. That we traditionally listen at day of inauguration, first year of implementation, but for the long term, man, that's tough. And your field is bringing it in. I mean, really hard, just saying we want user-based design, and NGOs are in turn learning from that. That we actually want user-based monitoring.
Right.
So that's huge.
And just one thing to that is that we've been looking at non-subsidized product distribution, and learning about that as designers is a way that if something breaks, there's a system where you can hear back, and then the person who sold it to you, maybe as a micro-entrepreneur within the community, could service that, but also could be kind of ears or eyes on the ground and continually sending feedback. It's not something that we've done yet, but that's what our kind of how we're seeking to kick off it with Giradora and Balde.
One of the challenges that we've always faced over the years is how do you speak the language of the people that you're trying to get input from? And that can be even the same macro level, English or French or whatever. And if English is so wonderful because you can speak it poorly and still be understood. And so it's kind of universal. But once you get into the culture, translation. So I would suggest, above all, one of the things you have to build in is an informant who is an appropriate translator so that you're actually getting meaning out of what's going on. So you've got social systems and psychological systems and biosystems and all kinds of things, but somebody has to translate that. So the informant translator becomes an important part. In qualitative research, we really weigh heavily into the informant. So building an informant in context becomes an important feedback loop.
For those of you who are joining us for the De Pree Leadership Lunch, it'd probably be a good idea when we finish here for you to grab a coffee on your way out and head over to Patent 101, which as you leave the library will be to your left, and there will be signage and possibly even De Pree Center staff helping you find your way. But we will need those of you joining us for lunch to go over there expeditiously, register for the meal, and continue this conversation with Jacqueline and with Eric as our speakers over lunch. As you leave, if you are not joining us for lunch, which unfortunately is fully subscribed RSVP event, do grab some of the materials at the door on the table immediately to your left. Learn a bit more about Splash. Also learn about an event that the De Pree Center will be hosting with the Center for Faith and Enterprise on March 16 here on the campus of Fuller. Thank you all for your contributions and your participation in this conversation. And thank you to Penny Herscovitch of the Art Center College of Design just up the hill, to Doug McConnell, our provost here at Fuller Seminary, to Jacqueline Fuller of Google, and to Eric Stowe of Splash. Please thank them.